Good evening, everybody. This is Betsy Morgan-Thaler calling the Open Space Committee meeting to order and asking for a roll call, beginning with Dell.
I'm here.
Thank you.
Nona Chariello here. Jackie Magno here.
Thank you very much. And we are missing but expecting Terry Lee. He will arrive sooner or later. And Gary Nielsen was unable to come tonight. So moving on to oral communications, anyone on the committee? We have our trusted council liaison in the audience. Anyone present want to make an oral comment?
Make one change to the agenda. I'd like to take item 4A and move it to between 6 and 7.
Surprise. Well, I guess that wouldn't make a very big deal. We'll roll with your request. Considering your request and with appreciation for your service on the committee,
Okay.
past and future, we'll do that. Okay, so we're moving therefore to approve the minutes as I'm going to move for their approval. Before I do that, I did want to thank Jackie Magno for putting them together. They are a lengthy process and received a number of revisions, but what they afford, and I wanted to bring this to the town council as well as any staff, as we reflect on some of the larger decisions that we've made around land use that will come either before the commission or certainly before the council. There is a lot of worthy information in these minutes apropos and related to the most recent discussion about the snack shack and its location. The committee members pulled together a number of really thoughtful questions. And so it is a reservoir of good information and ideas that we can keep alive. So thank you, Jackie, for that. And with that, I'd like to move for their approval or any edits that you might have.
I'll second that motion.
I approve.
Aye.
Approved.
Unanimous approval. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Oh, I just want to say, I found them very complete. I was going over them earlier today, and so thank you very much for all of the detail in there. There are a lot of things that I've forgotten that we actually said until I read through them again. So I find it very useful.
I appreciate your saying that, Del.
Mhm.
I did too. In fact, it's wonderful to reread things and think, whoa, that's a lot of good content. So passing over item number 4, we're going to move to 5A. And I'm going to take that on. This is an update to a meeting that occurred on December the 10th, Wednesday, December 10th. It happens to overlap with our town council meetings. Mid-Penn Regional Open Space District Board meets on this, their meetings overlap with town council meetings. So it's a rare privilege to be able to attend, but they held this one at 5:30. It was a special meeting applying to Hawthorne's alone. And I'll break with that to welcome Terry Lee. Hi, Terry. We skipped over item 4 and we jumped to item 5, and we're going to put item 4 between items 5 and 6 so that you can follow on the agenda. So the meeting that was held on December 10th, Darcy Smith attended. Hi, Darcy. Along with Mary Hufty from the town council, Karen Askey representing Parks and Rec, and I also attended. The board was meeting to consider one of 2 items. One of 2 options as regards Hawthorne's, and I'm going to read them into the record for those of you that were unaware. The choices facing the board was that they defer either defer the Hawthorne's historic complex, that's the 13 acres, until after the Hawthorne's area, that's 79 acres minus the 13 acres, until after the Hawthorne's area plan was both adopted and implemented, or at least that implementation was well underway. And the second of the two options was to defer the Hawthorne's area plan project itself and redeploy staff to other priority areas outside of Hawthorne's. So that choice fell to the full board, but there had been a subcommittee on the Hawthorne's historic complex. Two of those members supported option one, those being Kurt Riffle and Margaret McNiven. Those two directors supported it, while Director Karen Holman initially preferred option two, later proposing an amendment to option one because option one had the vast majority, leaving open to MidPen a path forward for the historic complex when and if Portola Valley brought a plan forward to MidPen. So she wanted to leave that loophole open and available, that the staff would pay attention again to the historic complex. But later the option one was voted on unanimously as I read it. So our town manager, Darcy Smith, spoke about the Hawthorne's plan. As she commented on the significant public interest that it has commanded in the past and will as it goes forward. And the projects need to comply with our general plan, with the town codes and regulations requirements, and then the coming necessary approvals. So it was a realistic assessment about what will be seen coming forward, and very involving of town staff. As for the budget, because I think this relates to the speed with which we're going to see a move here, MidPen's budget in brief for this fiscal year 2025-2026 envisions Hawthorne spending $1 million. That's in this fiscal year that we're halfway through. And that is on top of actual expenses through June 30th of last year of $490,000. So they have in their budget provisionally earmarked a total share of the AA funds, monies, these are taxpayer monies, of $1.7 million to the Hawthorne's project in total. So if you think of that $1 million to be spent in this year and the 490,000 already spent, they are well on their way to completion by the end of this year, assuming that budget is somewhat solid. So I think that's important to keep in mind as we as a town grapple with what could be coming to us. That's the report. And if there are any questions or comments, this would be a good time to hear them. And Darcy, if you have anything to add to this, please. Oh, you're good. Great. Hearing no questions, no comments from the committee, then I'm going to take us to the item 2 under 5A, and that is the creation of an open space subcommittee on Hawthorne's for this year, 2026. That it's unusual to propose a subcommittee and already propose the 2 members. So I want to explain how this came about. First of all, it's only for this year, so there's an option to serve next year should you like to. And you never know, maybe one of us won't be able to serve the entire term and there would be an opportunity then. But at least in the short term, Nona and I have been working together assiduously on how to look at Hawthorne's, how to proceed with Hawthorne's as it comes down the pike. As I just illustrated, it looks like it could be coming, a lot could be coming at us soon. And because of that time investment and because of the time that we have chewed up with our general manager, it seemed the easiest to proceed, at least for this short-term future, with the pair of us. I suspect that Hawthorne's will be very demanding of committee time. going forward, so don't worry, there'll be lots of opportunity to participate. That's the rationale, but we're very open to comments from the committee, questions from the committee.
I second.
Any discussion?
I think you two are the perfect people to be on that subcommittee since you seem to know the most about the project. So I'm very happy that you're doing that.
Thank you for the supportive comments. I appreciate that. All right, so there's a first and a second. If is no more discussion, can I call for a quick show of hands? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed. Thank you very much. Nona, will you take item 5B, the brief update about Ford Field Snack Shack property?
Yeah, I can offer two quick updates. The first is really on behalf of the Conservation Committee, because there is an element in the code, which is 18.56.020, required landscaping, that applies to Dorothy Ford Park, and the Conservation Committee is looking into that. The code states that in other than residential zoning districts, planting in required front yards shall conform with any roadside planting standards adopted by the Conservation Committee. So this does apply to Alpine. At least 25% of such required front yard shall be landscaped, such area to have a minimum dimension of 5 feet. Parcels with frontage on Alpine Road, parcels with frontage on the following roads, Alpine and Portola, if planted with trees and or shrubs, shall be planted with only such trees and shrubs as are on a plan approved by the Conservation Committee. For Alpine Road, this applies to the 75-foot setback. And so just as background, I have done some research on that, and we talked about this a little bit at our last meeting. I've confirmed that the redwoods that are on the frontage now were planted by volunteers organized by the Conservation Committee in 1975. And I've reported earlier to the Planning Commission that I surveyed the trees 3 months ago as a follow-up to a survey that was done in 2011 of the redwood trees. And what I found is that roughly a third of the redwood trunks that were present in 2011, that is 9 out of the 29 that I surveyed, have been cut down and are now stumps. The other 2/3 of the redwood trunks are still standing, but of the still standing trunks, 1 is dead with no green foliage at all, and 2 are clearly stressed. So just to sort of give this committee a heads up that conservation will be looking into whatever planting is associated with the next phase of the baseball field part of the parcel. And then the second item is really more an update for maybe Darcy to provide, which is that the RFPs went out and some proposals have been received. So I don't know, Darcy, if you want to update us on that.
Yes, hello, greetings. Darcy Smith, Town Manager. Congratulations to the new chair.
Not yet.
Oh,
We haven't voted yet. We deferred until after 5.
after 5:30. Okay, well, that's coming, who's ever the new chair. So yes, the RFP was posted in early January, and I'm pleased to say that we got 3 proposals. We're still in the process of evaluating those, but I anticipate that there will likely be a funding request that's before the town council next week as part of the mid-year budget to consider funding that. And that would be the first step in the process to move the project from conceptual to what I call the analysis phase, where we'd be looking at the costs and the various siting options for the project.
Any questions? Well, that's very good. Thank you very much. We will stay tuned. And because you came in late, we were we were thanking Jackie earlier for the substantive minutes on the project that we have now approved tonight. And hoping that the committee, that staff and council refers to them as the need comes up. So that brings us to the brief update on the Open Space Fund and the Skyline property. The property appraisal, and this is a very brief report. The property appraisal that we approved in March of 2025, well, we approved the funds, we enthusiastically approved the spending of funds for that appraisal and the legal expenses associated with it. Approved though they were in March of last year, the spending did not, actually the appraisal itself did not commence until August. It was a slow lift off the ground, and therefore the expenses are falling within this fiscal year. But it is moving forward. And that then brings us to the end of 5. And as we flipped items 4 and 5, that brings us to officer elections. I would just like to thank everybody for making the chair role this last couple of years so completely and utterly enjoyable. Working with a team such as you are, you're such incredible exemplars of volunteerism in our town. And I love the robust perspectives that we bring when we get together, how we thoughtfully arrive at the decisions that we do. And they've been really meaty decisions. And so thanks to every one of you for making this job really worthy, highly sought after. And it's so wonderful to have so many willing candidates to propose for successor chair role. Before I call for nominations, I would like to first thank Nona expressly for her tremendous gifts as vice chair. This has been essentially a co-chaired role here. And as you all might expect the vice chair to elevate to chair, that's not going to happen this year. And Nona wants to take the floor to explain why.
Yeah, so obviously I've really enjoyed working with Betsy and all of you, and I feel like we've accomplished a lot. There are really 3 reasons why I'd like to not step up this time. The first is that, as you probably remember, Betsy stepped up when our previous chair had to step down early in her 2nd year. And I agreed to sort of pinch hit and be vice chair at that time, knowing that it would be a big job, but not fully expecting to step up to chair at the end of Betsy's term. But maybe more importantly is that I just don't have the bandwidth right now. I've been chair previously. I know how much work it is, and I really can't take that on right now. Partly because of a 3rd reason, which is I'm not really sure what my plans are this year. And so my plans are still in flux, and I just don't want to take on a responsibility I can't fulfill. So I hope everyone understands. Thanks.
Nope, I don't get it. What's
That's what Nona is. Well, Nona doesn't know how to do anything without giving so fully of herself wherever she is seated. It will be the same. So thank you again for your tremendous support. And with that, I thought, well, I attend all the open space committee meetings and I attend almost all of the town council meetings. So I relied on the town council process, which is to nominate the person who has not yet served, but is the most senior on the committee. And that became the model that I thought that we might follow as a committee. And so I would like to nominate Carter War to become the next chair of the Open Space Committee.
I respectfully accept that I am not going to do as good a job as either one of you guys,
Well,
because my bandwidth is pretty limited. So I will be leaning on you all for help.
there's enough leaning to go around here that has been done, and there are a lot of good, solid support out there. With that, I would like to ask for committee discussion or a second.
I second.
Okay, well, that's tied. You're tied for second. All right, then may I, any committee discussion before we call for a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's-
Sailed through.
Thank you, Carter.
Thank you, Carter. Carter, I think that it's up to you to call for the next vote,
Yeah.
right?
I-
Thank you, Chair.
I'd like,
Or-
yeah, right. I'd like to nominate Jackie for vice chair, please.
I'd be a happy second on that.
Any additional discussion or other nominations?
She'd be fabulous.
I call for a second.
I've already
Second.
seconded, but
Okay.
I'll second it again.
Okay. Call for the vote.
Aye.
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 Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Jackie, for
Jackie.
willing to serve.
And secretary, is that a elected position or is that a, you know, an indentured servant position?
It is very much the indentured servant thing, as anyone who's done it can attest.
Yeah, and I would much rather not have to do two roles.
Yeah, and so, well, Jackie comes in at 5 o'clock with me to help set up the tech. So we had a little powwow beforehand, and she agreed, at least for now, to do the following. She's very tech savvy, and you agreed to do the verbatim minutes up to a point and then hand them to me. So I'll be cleaning them up, and every once in a while I'll call Nona.
Okay, so Betsy's nominated as secretary.
Second.
With a lot of leaning. With a lot of leaning, okay.
I move the nominations be closed. Is
I
there a s-
approve that.
I'll call for the vote.
Aye.
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 Any opposed? I figured there'd be at least one opposed.
I know. Okay,
Okay, we'll move back to the regular agenda. Item 6A, new business, open space fund committee discussion. Betsy, would you lead this, please?
sure. Let me give a little teeny bit of background, and that is that it's very essential when we're looking at land acquisition. I mean, one issue that makes the town hamstrung, if you will, when it comes to real estate acquisition is that it's a behemoth. It moves very slowly, it moves by consensus, and it moves in public. So the question came to the fore that what if there's an opportunity, the council, our committee meets once every 2 months. We have to find a time otherwise to meet on short notice in between. And if there is an opportunity to bring something before the council in closed session, but in order to bring something before the council in closed session, it requires some amount of due diligence on the front end. So some understanding of what the appraisal value of the land would be. If such a situation arises and it has a time urgency element to it, would the Open Space Committee consider allowing there to be some stipend whereby the staff could advance this to that level? It isn't seen to be a regular item, but an exceptional item. So I crafted the question before the committee right now for conversation is, if a situation arises where a prospective open space acquisition was not yet known to the Open Space Committee due to confidentiality reasons, and if advanced funding were needed to establish the value and viability, how would the town best source the funds to proceed? So it's not an easy question, but it is, I can well imagine something that could come up that would make us think twice before we said that falls within our purview. Our purview is outlined in the open space charter under duties. Number 2 says provide financial oversight for the open space fund. Prior to that and this was passed in February of 2023. Portola Valley Open Space Fund guidelines passed in 2017 is also explicit. The Open Space Advisory Committee recognizes the clearly defining permissible uses for the fund are important, and that acquiring properties is the first step in that process. So both of them speak to the importance of some oversight provisions. And what kind of latitude do we have for exceptional cases? So I
Well,
teed it up, Carter.
Great. Well, it would make sense, to have some funds available, for that initial, salvo, so to speak, to actually take a look at, some things, as something comes up, say a property owner says, hey, I've got this, I'd like you guys to think about it. And I don't know what the number is, but something to bridge to the next, Open Space Committee meeting, would make sense, so that we could, have some information, and, develop some background, for, the committee to actually, read and respond to, at the, at the next meeting. So some amount of money, whether it's $5,000, $10,000, but probably not more, from the Open Space Committee, to bridge the gap. It really is about, preparation for an agenda. Because I do think there may be some opportunities, coming. I don't know what they are, but, there are some larger properties, that potentially might be, coming up. So I think, some amount of money should be able to be appropriated, with the approval of the chair, the vice chair, and the town manager, to allow, some level of questions, to come up. And I'd like, Darcy to comment on this, as well.
Okay, now I can say congratulations, Chair and our Vice Chair. I saw the look on your face when you were nominated, but I think you will find this work very meaningful. So yes, I think Carter, you summed it up well, which is that what I've seen in the last 6 months that I've been here is we may have opportunities to acquire open space or study the acquisition. And when that happens, we need to move nimbly and quick. And my request, because this really came from me, is to have a small amount of money, essentially the cost of an appraisal and a little bit of attorney time to study the value of properties. Because when the town acquires property that is largely the most important information that we need to be able to bring it to the town council in a closed session and get feedback as to whether to move forward. I want to emphasize that we sometimes get unexpected inquiries, but we also can make unsolicited offers. So if a real estate property comes on the market or isn't even on the market, like we saw with Fogarty, we can, examine that. So what I didn't want to have happen is have to go through a cumbersome process. The town council adopts the budget in June, and then it's set for the year. We do the mid-year update, which, as I mentioned, is coming to the council next week. But if something happens outside of really those two meetings, it's a lot of work, frankly. It's a resolution that goes to the council. And so that could take time, but also it's just extra work. So I think my concept here wasn't a ton of money. I think the request in the current budget might contemplate 2 properties, but at this point, the property that we have expended funds on, as Betsy mentioned, was, already reviewed by the committee a long time ago. And that work was completed last year, but it's just now showing up on the budget. And then at this point, there are no other properties that we're expending any funds on. But if the opportunity arose, again, we would just want the ability to move quickly. And we would consult with you. We would want to make sure you're aware, since you do manage the funds per your charter. But as the charter says, we need to be able to move nimbly.
So the question of clarification, 2, actually. One is, would $10,000, Carter proposed 5 or 10, would $10,000 be adequate? And question number, and what was Fogarty, how did Fogarty run? So let's answer that one first, and then I'll
Yeah,
share my second.
That's a good estimate. The appraisal is typically anywhere from like $4,000 and up, depending on the property. And then we need a title report, which is a couple $100. And then we may just need to expend some time on attorney costs to do a little bit of analysis of those 3 items. But it would definitely be,
So up to
under
10 would be
2,000, yeah.
generous. Got it.
yeah, up to 10 would be
And
generous.
then secondly, is just a question in terms of informing the open space committee so we aren't blindsided learning from somewhere else. Would you imagine either our liaison, council liaison, or you informing the committee that monies have been spent?
Yes,
how-
or will be, will be spent, that there's a
I see.
spending idea. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. Any questions from the members?
My only question would be, if the money doesn't get used by the end of that budget cycle, what happens to it?
What I would hope is that it's just, it isn't it just wouldn't be spent.
Right.
I mean,
It's not going to go anywhere.
It's not gonna,
the concept, from my standpoint is that I think we should be able to spend money, for to look at opportunities. At the same time, if there aren't opportunities, I don't want the money, used up on, cocktails. Could be.
So I have sort of the opposite question. Is the idea that there would be a fixed sum in this account? Or is it that there would be an amount of, say, 10,000 available whenever something came up? And if there were multiple properties in a given year, then you could double
Well-
dip or triple dip.
Well, I think, the way that I would propose this, is that, this is probably, per issue. At the same time, my goal with this, expenditure, or allowing this expenditure, at the discretion, of the leaders of the committee and the town manager, is to provide a bridge, to deal with confidentiality, to deal with not having, it on the agenda, for the open space committee, You know, it really is. I mean, if 5 opportunities come up in a year, I would want to continue to, review those as they come up. But I don't want 2 meetings to go by, as soon as an opportunity comes up, I want it to show up, on the next committee's, agenda, so that then we can look at it and say, does that, continue to make sense? Or is that just a dopey opportunity that really isn't an opportunity?
Yes, so that is in alignment with what I would expect the funding approach to be. I'll just note that, yeah, the money is spent when the town pays the invoice, and that, as you know, goes on the warrant list to the council, and they see the charge and they see the fund that it's charged to. So if there's no invoices paid, then the money just stays in the open space, never like transferred out. So the good thing is you would continue to earn interest on that. And then it doesn't carry over fiscal year to fiscal year. So if we get to the end of June 30th and it's not spent, it just stays in the fund. That.
Before you leave the podium, this is a question for for the Open Space Committee and for you, Darcy. Because this is relatively new and we're all likely to encounter something unexpected out there, what if we agree that in 18 to 24 months, we revisit how this is working for the staff, how this is working from our perspective, just in case we want to tweak whatever motion we may or may not be voting on tonight?
Yes, but I'll just remind you, in theory, this is a decision that you'd make every year. So,
We would make it once a year?
yeah,
Oh,
so
I see. Okay.
the
With the budget.
reason it's before you now is that as part of the mid-year budget update, which was reviewed by the Finance
Got it,
Committee
got
last
it.
Monday and Wednesday for review and consideration, is that there was this request for the funding to cover the Fogarty appraisal and the attorney work that was involved. And you may remember there was a council closed session on that last year. And again, I know there was some action taken by this committee last fiscal year, but the thing is, we started a new budget July 1, and that appropriation wasn't carried over. Again, each fiscal year stands alone. So what we're talking about now, as I understand it, is the mid-year budget, which again would be potentially action made next Wednesday or continued. You will need to make a separate budget recommendation as part of your work in the next few months to prepare for the next fiscal year budget that starts July 1. And so you'd need to do this kind of every year and just consider that along with any other budget recommendation, whether it's for preservation or other activities consistent with the fund guidelines.
But we wouldn't be recommending that. This is an option that you have. This isn't a recommendation of expenditure.
Correct. Well, can you clarify the question? Because
Let me approach it in a different way. First of all, there's the budget about how much does the committee itself want to spend. Some handful of years ago, we were creating brochures, open space brochures, and so there would be an expense item. For the last number of years, we have had 0 expenses, so we don't turn in a request for committee funds. Secondly, we've had a maintenance subcommittee for a while that would recommend expenditures on parcels that we envisioned would come out of the open space fund, though sometimes the work didn't happen and sometimes the money was not expensed out of the fund, though it was recommended by committee. So we're dealing with a little bit of a lumpy road there. And as we go forward, this is an option, but not a request. Right, we're giving you the option to tap into the fund up to $10,000 as I hear it. And we would do that on an annual basis, I guess, around the time of the budget being passed. So our May-June meeting. But it really isn't a budget item from our standpoint. It's an opportunity.
well, The way the
to-
budget works is you make a recommendation, then it goes to the council. So essentially, if the council takes action to approve the expenditure of the open space funds in their adopted budget, that is adopted in the budget, and that there's some, I guess, housekeeping items where we would consult you with the expenditure, but essentially it's approved in the budget. That spending authority is authorized. That makes sense.
How about,
We could,
I wouldn't know what motion to make then. Because I don't,
for
I'm a
right
little
now,
bit confused about the from a finance standpoint. How recommending that if this happens and if this happens,
yeah.
then please access these funds. But if this and this don't happen, don't access those funds. To me, that's not exactly a budget item. So, I mean, but if it is to you all, we'll handle it in what way you suggest.
I just want to ask a couple questions to clarify. The town council sets the budget yearly. Part of what it can set, what would the line item in the budget be that relates to this bridging funding? Like where would that show up?
It would show up in the open space fund expenditures. And the note, if you will, would be, evaluation of potential acquisition of open space sites.
So we as a council might approve up to 100,000 to be spent in any given year in bridging situations. And if the open space chair or subcommittee, whoever you end up appointing, and you, the town manager, agree this is an appropriate bridging expenditure, then it could be used. But the line item in the budget cannot be exceeded without coming back to council for that year. Is that it?
Correct, but I'll just say what you stated first, which is that the chair and the town manager come to an agreement that should be memorialized somewhere, whether it's in the recommendation ultimately, but just, procedurally, once the town council approved the budgets, there's typically not necessarily that level of
Yeah.
oversight. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I think.
but
the
it could be
motion-
requested.
And this is a question for you, Darcy. Is the motion to approve appointing a subcommittee to work with the town manager to approve individual situations where up to $10,000 can be spent to evaluate an open space opportunity, subject to, within whatever budget is approved for a given year by the council?
Yeah, that would be a good idea. And right now, I guess to clarify what we're talking about is this mid-year budget amendment, which was presented to the finance committee. I think there was a little cart before horse because it wasn't necessarily the normal communication because it's the mid-year budget. So to some extent, it's a very compressed budget process. But it's before you tonight.
Thank you.
And so if essentially you're making a recommendation to the council as part of the review next Wednesday night, but this is like a one-time only thing. If you approve this with a specific amount of money, but I just want to emphasize some of the money was already spent on Fogarty. So essentially that's already spent.
Well,
You
but
would-
this is forward looking.
Yeah, that, I don't know that we have to retrofit anything, right?
Right,
This is,
right.
again, appointing a subcommittee to work with you on a case-by-case basis to approve expenditures of up to $10,000 to evaluate open space opportunities. And that is subject to that amount of money remaining in the budget approved by the council for that year.
Yes.
Thank you. That was very helpful.
So without any, in order to move this along, I'm going to make a recommended motion.
Do you want public comments?
You have a comment, Dave?
Always. Yeah, You know, we are the most red tape heavy town, and I get that part of that's the Brown Act.
Could you repeat that, Dave? That's see here,
Yeah,
I didn't hear your,
can you hear me now?
well, I can hear you. It's just that adjective that you used to describe us, I missed.
Oh, I said we are the most red tape heavy town for our size. So I don't know if it was me, I would say make it $25,000 and make it upon the agreement of the chair or vice chair of the committee and the town manager and get on with it. I mean, our open space fund spins off $10,000 in interest every week, from what I can tell. So it just makes everything harder. The more we dig into this and limit this, I trust everybody in the room to not like have a big cocktail party with their $25,000. So I don't know. I would make it even simpler and larger. If you want to move quickly on things in our real estate environment, the I don't know, the less subcommittees and meetings, the better. So I'm all for this, but I'd like to even expand it. So thank you.
Thank you, Dave. I will make only one comment, which is I think I heard Darcy suggest 10,000. And she's nodding that that's what she said. It's a nice, generous point you make, Dave. Thank you.
Any additional discussion? Mona?
Yeah, I would suggest that we revise the guidelines then for the Open Space Fund to say something like, on an annual basis, the Open Space Committee will consider whether to create an option for the town manager in consultation with the chair or vice chair for spending authority for timely use of open space funds for evaluation of property acquisition on a case-by-case basis, just to have the guidelines be consistent with whatever changes we're making.
I appreciate your thoroughness. Great idea. I support that.
I do too.
10.
Okay. Do we need a vote?
I'll second the motion if it wasn't already.
Okay.
And
All in-
yes, I think
All
so.
in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Terrific.
Next item is 6B, future agendas. And I ask that this be put on for tonight, to help give us, guidance as we move forward this year. Some of the things that I think we need to make sure that we're prepared for are opportunities. And in order to be prepared for opportunities, you need to understand what you're looking for. And then what to look for. I think that not just properties, but easements, paths, trails, one of the things that was coming up, in other discussions in town, are wildlife corridors. And I think that potentially there are some things that, we would want to be open to discussions about. Some of the properties that occupy some of these wildlife corridors are underdeveloped at this point. That there may be some opportunities for additional trails, and conservation areas, associated with that. So that's one of the things that I'd like to, be prepared to work on at our meetings, and in preparation for the meetings, is criteria for selection, of opportunities, and to update the properties list and or regions or purposes, within our guidelines.
I wholeheartedly agree.
Would you be thinking about properties that were already located adjacent to current open space areas as kind of like the first line of inquiry on that?
I do. I mean, I think there's quite a range of, of, of properties, some are, are potentially already open space. Others might not be, but there might be easements, to create continuity,
Mhm.
for really good, trail access, including, the Ring the Bay Trail.
Mhm.
So I don't know what they are
Mhm.
right now. I just think that, you know, we are a committee that, we're charged for open space acquisition. And I think that, open space means a lot of things, but I mean, easily the most understandable is the acquisition of open space. But I think access to open space,
Mhm.
you know, via connectivity, trails, paths, wildlife corridors, should be thought of, as being open space as well.
Mhm.
And I don't know that the committee has thought about it that way.
Mm.
And, with the interest, amongst, some on the conservation committee, around, fencing, limitations, I saw this, as a potential opportunity, to, for the town to acquire, conservation easements protect against
Mhm.
fencing
Mhm.
that then would also provide compensation, for the loss of use, of a property or the gifting of a conservation,
Mhm.
as, something valuable to the property owners, and, it would also then provide access, to some tax advantage, for some of those property owners as well.
Yeah, that's true that there's a tax advantage for that. I know a number of people who've done that sort of thing for their property.
Mhm.
Everybody wins.
Yep. So anyway, yeah, that was something that I wanted to be on future agendas. Do other people have other ideas?
I'd just like to follow up on that great suggestion. And partly because it reminds me of something that this committee was considering some years ago, which is what to do with all of the town-owned properties that are underutilized and inaccessible, things like the Sinkies and, that are really small and the town acquired because a developer couldn't build on them or whatever. It seems to me that those might fall into that category of being viable wildlife corridors because they are relatively small, but they might be connectors. And I know Terry has thought about that too. So, I mean, this goes way back in the Open Space Committee, but at one point we thought about whether or not the town should divest of those properties because they are liabilities currently if they're not being maintained and yet they're sort of being used. But this would be a great use potentially.
There are some properties that the town owns, kind of in the upper regions of Wayside that, if access were, created, from, kind of the Larry Lane, complex of trails, through there, over, across the top of El Mirador, into, Windy Hill, could really be a very, very viable way, to use those public owned properties. Also within, provide access, for maintenance, both of access, but also, for, fire protection and so forth. So I think that we have, we have kind of an opportunity and as such a responsibility, to provide the connectivity and the guidance to start to look at some larger maps of the town, to say what is important, and how could we vision, creating things, maybe that aren't on the books right now, but would be important.
I too would like to add on to that outstanding list. And you've identified the core areas where we're likely to spend a lot of time right there. But we also have this new priority conservation area, and looking to how we make most use of the priority conservation area and extend it as appropriate. Because as I recall, its terminus is around Los Trank. I think it comes down from Windy Hill along Alpine Road, and as I recall, terminates at the Hawthorns, at one end, I think at the far end of the Hawthorns, but I am not looking at the map right now. Whether we could continue that in any direction, I think would be interesting to look at what the benefits might be there.
Any others for consideration for this? Okay. I don't think there's any actions, at this point, but, I'll be, working with, with you all to make sure that these items, do move forward, either in presentations, or thoughts, or maps. Next item on the agenda is adjournment.
Motion to adjourn?
On time, wow, yeah.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Bye.
Aye. Thank you.